the example that Lou gave, for example. We'll cover that. Protein, keeping that up, particularly if you're vegetarian, how to increase that. And we'll touch on sleep and, you know, foods that have got hidden calories in. So those are some of the challenges, but none of them insurmountable, I must say. We'll come on to some more questions and things in a minute. What I thought I'd show you that just might be useful is my own tracker, my own stats, because I think there's a few points that I want to illustrate. So I'm going to share the screen with you, if I can find this here. And this here was, as you can see, started in 2016. So October 2016, you can see my weight was 58.1. And so the first thing I wanted to show you, and I've got many trackers because I went on, but this is just the very first beginning. So you've got 58.1. And obviously I'm a small physique. So this is just my illustration. 58.1 on me was about 35% body fat. And I was too heavy, you know, and it wasn't in the right places either. So I wasn't happy with the way it looked. So you can see week 1, 58.1 to 57.1. Then it went down 56, didn't really move for a week. Didn't really move very much the third week. Moved a bit. Now down to 57.5. You can imagine how I was feeling here. I've been doing it for 4 weeks. I was 0.6 of a kg down after 4 weeks. Then I went down to 56, a bit like the example that Elaine's just given us, where suddenly it dropped. And then 55.7. So, you know, wasn't that happy with that. Then I'll go back up again, 55.8. Stay the same again, 55.8. Go up again, 56. You know, just under 56. And then I had a drop, 54.5, down to 54, 54.9. 54.5, all the way down. You start to see it starts to go down to 51, 50, and down to 58. My next tracker would show it going down to 47.8. I think it was about that when I had the photo shoot that you saw the first pictures of. So that's the first thing to illustrate, is it goes up and down. You know, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 2 steps back, sometimes 3 steps back. The other thing that I wanted to illustrate for you is my getting up time wasn't 5 a.m. at that point, you know, so I didn't have as much time as I have now. I was getting up at all these different times, 6:30, 7, sometimes later. Also to show you that I wasn't really training that much. I was training, you know, 2 to 3 times a week when I very first started. And you can see sometimes I was doing a bit of a jog, but mainly I wasn't, you know, your jog here, jogging 30 minutes, not training, jogging. And I started to step the training up, but I certainly wasn't training every day. You can see on the steps that I was averaging 4,000 to 5,000 to start off with. I started to creep it up a bit to 10. Then it started to stay more or less consistently in double figures. You can see the steps, you know, so what I wanted to illustrate here is that, you know, no one's perfect. It's habit forming as you sort of start to learn this stuff. Protein, like you, I really struggled to keep it up at the beginning. You know, had a really sort of conservative, and it would go down to 50, 80, stayed in the 80s for quite some time, you know, under 100 for quite some time. Gradually started it to go up. In fact, it took quite a long time to get up. So I struggled just like you say. Your fats was around about 50, the carbs, again, all over the place really. Calories, I saw that I started to cut them quite considerably once I got to grips with it. But to start off with, you know, and I was just like some of you, where I wasn't, you know, probably tracking. I thought I was tracking accurately, but in a lot of cases I wasn't using the green ticks on my fitness pal, so my calories were going up and down, etc. I think what was interesting as well is that I was making notes here, but I was living life for sure. I was going to a lot of parties, I was traveling a lot. So, you know, Washington, Palm Beach, sometimes I thought I was good. I put things like very busy, you know, whatever that had to do with anything, I don't know, you know, Palm Beach, I was there. I put bad and good sometimes. I was away again there, you know, dinner parties, I was started to record the alcohol, New York, traveling a bit more with going out with clients, skiing. You know, this is a time where I was still doing a lot, you know, champagne, red wine, etc., etc. But the important thing for me was the averages. And I think this is really what, you know, I found in the end was very motivating was, you know, the averages started to shift downwards. So the average weight there was 57.7, 56.5, 55.7, 56.5. And gradually the averages started to go down. And I was also able to look at the averages on the calories and the protein and the fats. So you can see just a very, very normal journey. I'm going to show you something else in a minute. But for the moment, I just wanted to make the point there that it wasn't like I necessarily had an iron will. It wasn't that I didn't have the challenges, but my mindset was very developed by this time because I was doing so much work on mindset. And I really had a very, very clear sense of the identity that I was aiming towards, you know, what I was trying to cultivate in terms of my version 2.0, which is just a phrase that I coined that phrase. So, I had it wasn't like I had this iron willpower and I just suddenly decided to use it in October 2016. It wasn't that. It was that I really at the same time started to seriously decide that I didn't want to have, you know, a body that was wearing out, that was going to go downhill, that I was just going to be, you know, a business person burning the candle at both ends, and sort of settle, I suppose. So I think that was for me something that I want to address because I think the mindset part is so important. The other thing that I want to share with you is my current situation, because with my Fitness Pal now, you know, I don't record that often. I just record now and again just to see what it's looking like. So let me see if I can just find that for a second. You know, every few days I record, just got to find it, sorry, 2 secs. Just so that I can, here we go. I'm trying to find you now. There you are. Sorry, 2 secs. There it is. Here we go. So I wanted to show you on my Fitness Pal what it's looking like for me at the moment. So weight, you know, I don't record all the time, but you know what it shows you is that when I do record, you can see that the weight just sort of sticks between 50 and 52, which unless I'm preparing for a photo shoot, I want it to be nearer 50. So in my last photo shoot, I was bang on 50 kgs. But otherwise, you know, I'm trying to maintain and build some muscle, so it goes up to about 52. And if you look, it doesn't really vary that much, because once you learn how to do this, you know, you can stay like it. You can go up and down, you know how to do it. So these are skills, like I said, for life. If I look at, you know, like I said, I don't record very often, but when I do, you can see it's more or less sticking to about there. So last 30 days, you can see how often I've recorded, not that often really. But the good news is you haven't got to do this forever, is really what I suppose I wanted to illustrate. If you look at my consumption of protein, last 90 days, nearly always it's around about there. You know, and this is just from intuitive eating now. If you look at the fats, you know, it's a bit more variable. I like eating fats as opposed to carbs. So once you get to, you know what food content is, you can be very, very intuitive with your eating, and you just record now and again. So I just wanted to show you that that's where we're trying to head to. But, you know, like you, I had to start with trial and error, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and just persist really. And that tracker that I just showed you was over a period of about 4 months, I think, 3 to 4 months, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, something like that. And you can see that, you know, I was well on the way. But those first couple of weeks, you know, I definitely felt the frustration of it dropping, coming back, going up, and I had all of those things to contend with. So it's all very normal what you're saying. So any questions or comments on that? And then I'll just jump straight into some of the other things that I wanted to tell you about.
Angela, I've got a question about sleep. I don't know if that's coming, or can I?
We are going to come on to sleep. So let's do it, and then you know, then we'll ask all those sleep questions at the beginning. What I wanted to do first of all was I've got a few books that I'm going to show you that you may be interested in buying after this and having a read through. There's one book here which I think really nicely illustrates the fact that we're not just eating protein to lose weight and build muscle. We're also eating it because it does great things to the mind. And I just wanted to do a reminder as we sort of approach the mindset stuff now that, you know, our mind is probably the most integral part, besides our heart and our other vital organs, of our body, you know, because that's the thing that directs everything, isn't it? And, you know, it is fueled by food in just the same way as every other part of our body is. And so, you know, the brain is there to, you know, to implement willpower as much as anything. So you can imagine if you're depleting the brain of the foods that it needs, the high quality foods that it needs, then, you know, it's not going to work effectively. And that incorporates the fact that willpower will be depleted. And it's been put really nicely in this book here. So this book might be something that I will send you all the links to these, but this one, I'll just read you this little paragraph because I think it just so nicely illustrates the point. So the brain makes up 1/50 of our body mass, but consumes a staggering 1/5 of the calories that we burn for energy. If your brain were a car in terms of gas mileage, it'd be a Hummer. Most of our conscious activity is happening in our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for focus, handling short-term memory, solving problems, and moderating impulse control. It's at the heart of what makes us human, and it's the center for our executive control and our willpower. Here's an interesting fact. The last in, first out theory is very much at work inside our head. The most recent parts of our brain to develop are the first to suffer if there is a shortage of resources. So older, more developed areas of the brain, such as those that regulate breathing and our nervous responses, get first helpings from our bloodstream and are virtually unaffected if we decide to skip a meal. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, feels the impact. Unfortunately, being relatively young in terms of human development, it's the runt of the litter come feeding time. Advanced research shows that why this matters. A 2007 blah, blah, blah study on the impact of nutrition and willpower said this: in one set, researchers assigned tasks that did or did not involve willpower and measured blood sugar levels before and after each task. Participants who exercised willpower showed a marked drop in the levels of glucose in the bloodstream. Subsequent studies showed the impact on performance when two groups completed one willpower-related task and then did another. Between tasks, one group was given a glass of Kool-Aid lemonade sweetened with real sugar to get a buzz, and the other was given a placebo lemonade with Splendida, which is buzzkill. The placebo group had roughly twice as many errors on the subsequent test as the sugar group. The study concluded that willpower is a mental muscle that doesn't bounce back quickly. If you employ it for one task, there will be less power available for the next unless you refuel. To do our best, we literally have to feed our minds, which gives new credence to the old saying, food for thought. Food that elevates blood sugar evenly over long periods, like complex carbs and proteins, becomes the fuel of choice for high achievers. Literally proof that you are what you eat. So it's a really, when people say to me, what do I think of fasting and, you know, things of that nature and, you know, supplementation, I always think about this, you know, that we need to have high quality, nutrient dense foods, not just for our body, but for our mindset, and our mindset in terms of maintaining our willpower all the way through the day. So that's another very good reason for wanting to eat, you know, the sorts of foods that and to propel us forward to search for those protein options. because, you know, it's in so doing, it's really going to help us to make those positive choices, especially later in the day when we're feeling, you know, a bit tired. So food is key, but for more reasons than we've probably mentioned before. So getting on to what I was saying about, you know, the 2 steps forward, 2 steps back scenario. And besides knowing what you have to do and tracking it in the way you've seen me track it, you know, how else? Because all the things, all the challenges that we've mentioned, I can give you all the strategies, and, you know, we all nod and we all know, but still, sometimes we need willpower. So I've mentioned one thing about willpower, but another thing is tied much to our identity. And before I go into the details of identity, I wanted to read you something else from another book, which you may or may not have seen, which is this one called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it really is such an amazing book. I very, very highly recommend it to you. But here's some highlights, some key points, and then we can discuss them. It's systems and not goals that make the difference. You know, we can want as much as we like to have a 6-pack, or to lose 10 kgs, or, you know, to look great in a swimsuit. But at the end of the day, it's not the goals on their own that are going to achieve that for us. It is the systems that we put in place that make the difference. And I think it was you, Michelle N, who mentioned it about being more organized, you know, and putting some of these routines in place at home with regard little things like, you know, prepping and the kids things that night before. It's these systems that in the end propel us forward. Interestingly, once we've set these systems, it's actually running systems that make you happy, you know, and that can be constantly refined as well. Because if we're always measuring our target, as you saw on my tracker there, against the goal, you know, then that would dictate me to be extremely unhappy on certain weeks, because my weight would have gone back up, you know, regardless of how hard I tried. It would not have made me happy. And then suddenly I would have this forced burst of happiness because I would have dropped half a kg. The truth of the matter with that drop, as we saw, you know, Shah Wellness, someone asked a question about that, I'll tell you a bit more about it, is that, you know, a lot of successful, very bright business people, actors, all sorts of people like that sitting around the tables. And I used to be able to hear them talking about the fact that, you know, they've lost 2 kgs in 2 days. And I know myself that is water weight. That's probably that they've been to the toilet more regularly, you know, and etc. So there's many, many reasons for that. And yet, you know, they felt this burst of happiness. They'll come back on the plane, they'll eat normally, and they'll put the 2 kgs back on. And it won't be fat, but they'll feel it is, and they'll be unhappy, you know. Whereas if you've got a system, and you have a system in place, and you're following it through every single day, just rating yourself on, did I follow my system today, is really, really motivating, because you can go to bed, you know, giving yourself some ticks and some pats on the back that you've actually done the things that you believe are going to lead you towards your goal. So it's running systems that make us happy. And the great thing is they can always be constantly refined. Another point is about having identity-based habits. So having habits and systems that are based on who we want to become and not necessarily who we are, because behavior needs to be congruent to be sustained. So behavior needs to be congruent to be sustained. What does that mean? So if we want to have a certain physique, you know, and if we want to feel a certain way, then we have to do some work on constructing this vision in terms of who that person is, who that identity is that we are trying to create and that we're working to create. And if you think about this person who wears a lovely swimsuit and looks great on the beach, or if you think about this person who's really strong and able to, you know, do their workouts every day, or if you think about this person who's athletic and of course works out every day and makes healthy choices for food, whoever that person is that you're trying to construct, you know, if you start to then think, okay, so what are their behaviors? What would their system be today? And you start to write out your systems along the lines of, you know, whilst you're in this mindset, whilst you're thinking about this version 2 that you're creating. I'll come on to some of the examples about myself in a minute. I actually wrote some examples here for you know, when I was constructing this version 2.0. But once you've actually written that down, of course, you can refine this system every week. You know, I used to do it on a Sunday. I would look and say, is there any way I can tweak this? Is there something that I've missed? Is there something I could improve? Have I learned anything this week? But then when you're following that system and you feel that behavior and those things that you're doing are totally congruent with the identity that you're creating, you know, it makes you feel very empowered. It makes you feel very positive, very happy. And yes, you still encounter all sorts of challenges. You know, life doesn't stop whilst you're doing this, but you are in a much, much better frame of mind to be able to deal with these things because you know where you're going. You know where you're going in terms of the person becoming. And it's not what we do or what we get in the end that makes us feel empowered and happy. It is, you know, who we are, who we become, because we can never predict what's going to happen to us. You know, all the things that happen to us. Mina could never have predicted that car accident, you know, and all of the things that happen to us on a regular basis, good and bad, we can't predict them, which is part of the excitement of life. And I'll come on to human needs probably next week. But what we can start to predict is how we would deal with anything that shows up. And this is including how we, you know, how we would be in a social situation, you know, how we'll be at a party, how we'll be at a restaurant when it's coming to food, because don't forget, we're still on the body side of it at the moment. You know, this will be very much equally applicable to business situations, relationships, etc. But for the moment, we're talking about food and alcohol and habits that we're trying to create. Part of the work for the vision is very much, you know, how does she behave? How often does she go out? How does she behave in a work environment? What choices does she make, you know, in a restaurant? And how does she, what food does she create for her family? And how does she, you know, operate if you've got conflicting desires, if you've got a mum who's 90 and, you know, or you've got a child who's 15, you know, what would she do, that person? If you start to think about those habits and those behaviors when you're out of the heat of the situation and you're out of the rush, and you then can give yourself a bit of forethought, it's amazing how much more you become, you know, in control. And, you know, that lovely feeling of structure and control that Elaine mentioned just starts to become part of you and more, you know, part of the being, and easier as well. So the next point here is decide who you want to be and then prove it to yourself with small wins. And this is, you know, at the end of the day, when you are actually doing your scorecard, rather than feeling that, oh my goodness, you know, it's just one more thing to do, what you're actually doing is you're looking forward to filling it in, because, you know, you've got these small wins. And, you know, on a day full of aggravation and challenges, it's lovely to have a few small wins. And even if those wins are, okay, well, you know, I managed to do my steps, there's a win. You know, despite everything that happened, I had to deal with that commute. I had 3 or 4 meetings, but I got my protein in. There's a win. You know, I couldn't make the workout, but I did log the workout down. It was 7:30 at night. I didn't want to do it, but I did the workout and I did it quick in, you know, 40 minutes. There's a win. So having these little wins and congratulating yourself at the end of the day really sets you up amazingly for the next day. And it gives you time to start to consider what the challenges were, how you might have navigated them, and sets you up for the next day as well. And everything is, you know, improving with repetition, because these are all skills that we're learning. So habits can be thoughts as well as actions. And this again is a very important point, because, you know, I mentioned about a story, and I will be bringing on for you next week or the week after a coach that I've used, a Tony Robbins coach that I've used. She's amazing, this lady, and she really describes it so much better than I do. I'll give you some introduction to some of these concepts, but we'll let her describe it. But one of the things she talks about is the fact that, you know, all our thoughts are really a series of questions and answers. I might have mentioned this to you already, that when we're thinking, you know, it's really just a dialogue going in, and we're asking ourselves questions, you know, do I really believe that? And then we're answering, no, I don't. Or, you know, you're actually judging, you're asking yourself at the moment, what you think about what I'm saying. You know, is that true? Or I'm not sure if that's true. It could be true, but someone else said this and blah, you know. So it goes on and on, this dialogue in our head. And one of the things that's really important as part of that dialogue is that you start to notice it firstly and see whether you are reverting back to stories that absolutely may not be true about yourself, about things and the way they are, about events. Because, you know, very often we'll have an event and then we'll have a story. And if any of you have been to landmark training, has anyone been on landmark before? So, you know, you'll see that we very much overlap very often, if we don't notice it, the facts and the story. And then we, you know, our story about something actually becomes the fact. So we may say, you know, well, you know, he stabbed me in the back and he didn't really, you know, something happened and there's a story about it, and we merge it and then we believe that that was the true thing. And, you know, but bring it closer to home, we might say, yeah, I'm just not very good at recording things. I'm not an administrator. I'm just not very good at doing long walks. I'm just not a workout person. You know, I don't eat a lot of protein, or, you know, I'm just not very organized, or I don't like to count calories, or I don't weigh myself, or, you know, all these stories and labels we have about ourselves. Once we notice them, the brilliant thing is it's within our power to change them. And what we can start to do is replace those stories and those thoughts with what we are in terms of the identity that we're creating. So it's all up to us, the identity that we create. But if we decide that we're going to create a version 2.0 of ourselves, that is an athletic, strong, you know, ever improving specimen, or whatever you want to call yourself, then you start to think, well, what does she do? Well, of course, you know, she gets up at a certain time. She does this, that, and the other, you know, with her routine. This is what she eats. This is what she thinks. She meditates. This is how she dresses. This is when she leaves the house. You know, this is how she gets her exercise in. This is how she conducts herself in conversations. These are the food choices she makes. So you can start to write this down, and we'll come on to journaling in a moment. But habits can be thoughts as well as things. And if we notice that we're actually having thoughts and asking questions and giving ourselves answers, why am I no good at this? You know, for example, and then the brain will very obligingly say, oh, because, you know, you're not very good at that. You don't do that. You know, so instead you could change the questions. How can I be better at this? Who could help me with this? What resources are available to me to help me with this? How could I overcome that challenge tomorrow? So you start to ask these other types of empowering questions, brilliant questions, great questions. As Tony Robbins says, you know, the quality of our questions determines the quality of our emotions, and the quality of our emotions determines the quality of our life. So if we start to ask these empowering questions of ourselves, and we start to notice these stories, which maybe used to be true, but are no longer true for the new version, then we can start to create really, really empowering habits, thought habits. So we start to tell ourselves great things. There's much to talk to you about. This is just an overview at the moment. Another way of setting habits is by specifying times and locations to do things. You know, so for example, the completion of the tracker, you know, your stats, for example, the completion of MyFitnessPal, if you decide that there is a certain time of the day which will be perfect for you to do that in an ideal world, you know, 9 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the morning, sitting in this chair, sitting in bed just before you go to sleep, whatever you decide. And then you decide, okay, that's what I always do as part of that routine, a morning or a nighttime routine. It then starts to become easier because you're now taking out the decision making as to when shall I do that thing. And, you know, you either forget it or you think I'll do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow takes over and you just don't do it. So starting to write down this routine, starting to assign activities, routine activities that you want to get done with locations and with times, means that you take the decision making out and you're more inclined to do it. And that will really, really help you as well. Habit stacking is another thing. If you decide now that, you know, for example, the filling out of MyFitnessPal, for example, the night before, you could have a series of other habits that you now are going to stack together. You know, so you may end up with, and I will show you a scorecard next week or the week after, where you can, you know, celebrate your small wins at the end of each day. but your scorecard will probably consist of a whole load of things that we're introducing. Did I do the steps? Did I do the PFC? Did I weigh myself? Did I put my creams on in the nighttime, or, etc., etc. There'll be a whole load of things that you might decide that you want to do. Did I do my gratitude journal, etc.? You can start stacking these things. So if you decide that there is a certain time and a certain point in the day where you're going to be doing the completion of your stats, for example, stack a couple of things before and after. Put things, if you're not drinking enough water, always replenish your drinks around the house, for example. Always have your scales out and in a certain place, so that when you walk into the bathroom, there they are. You can go to the loo, you can step on the scales, you can put your face cream on, you can, sit down and start your meditation. This stacking of habits will really, really help you. So each habit can have a home, so I always do my morning routine. I'm talking about morning routine here. And so it's my little pile of things. It's probably overkill because I have books for everything. But, I've got a book there for gratitude. I've got a book for visualization and journaling. I've got a book which is things that I want to get done, the scorecard. I've got a money book. We're talking about in longevity, we've got a whole season on money and manifestation. And so I've got a money book here, which is the color of the FT, as an example. So these things work for me. It's called Wonder Woman. So, but you have, your location for your habits. So I don't have to run around looking for this stuff every morning. I know exactly what I'm going to do when I get up and do it. So there's more. We're going to study some more of this book, but it's called Atomic Habits. I'd highly recommend that you have a read of that. In terms of getting started on your vision, and then I'll come on to routines a little bit as well. But in terms of getting started on your vision, I do cover this quite extensively in one of the modules on Teachable. So do have a look at it and have a listen. I think it's 20 minutes or so, Annabelle, is it? I can't remember now, but definitely worth having a listen to that while you're sitting there with your own book, because it prompts you with lots of questions. But the first thing I would say is that when you envisage this individual that you're trying to create, and obviously it's the you that you are, but it's your next version of you. And maybe, we all go through many iterations of ourselves. So we're not sitting here as the same person that we were, when we were 5 and 6, or even 15 and 16, or even, 25 and 26, or some of us in the 30s, 40s, 50s, we're different iteration. And really what we're trying to do here is make that a lot more purposeful and a lot more directed, as opposed to arriving, at the next decade by accident and just having our strings pulled and our influences unchecked, and just turning up being who we are by accident. What we want to do is become a person who is exactly where we're headed. Now, of course, you can't eliminate all the surprise things that are going to happen, nor would we want to, because there are 6 human needs as identified Tony Robbins and obviously the psychologist before him. And one of those key human needs is a desire for variety. And so we want surprises. We only want nice ones, though. We don't want the ones that we don't want. But unfortunately, we have to contend with all of them. But we are very much driven by human needs. So we do want a bit of variety, but nevertheless, on a day-to-day basis, what we're looking for is to be very purposeful, very driven, and feel like we're making daily progress, no matter how tiny. And so when you're actually putting this person together, this image of this person, the first thing that I would look to do is to give this individual a name. And you don't have to share it, because you might feel silly, because lots of people come up with things like, I don't know, the Powerful Queen, Wonder Woman. I'm trying to think of some of the great names that came out in the because eventually people do share them once we know each other better. You're probably telling us who your persona is. The first one I created was called the Calm Toned CEO. And the reason for that, and I think I've told some of you the story, is that I was thinking, what are going to be the main traits of this individual? And I thought, right, I want to be a lot calmer. I want to be able to I'm tend to, you know, I'm a bit, my kids used to call me the volcano. I tend to erupt. It's very quick, you know, and so I wanted to be a lot calmer in all my dealings, not just at home, but, you know, in the office and everything like that, both internally and externally. I wanted to be calmer. Of course, I wanted to be toned. You know, I wanted a more toned physique. I wanted to look strong. I wanted to see muscle definition. And of course, you know, I was a CEO of a business, so I called it that, the calm tone CEO. And then I started to think about, well, okay, what does she look like? So I described, you know, the body is strong, tanned, healthy, able, exceptional. That's what I described that. Emotions. Her emotions are calm, playful, excited, curious. Relationships. Relationships are nurturing, empowering, thoughtful, kind, loving, supportive. You know, so I went on and I just described all of these aspects of this individual that I was building. How she feels, what she likes, you know, what she's learning, what impact is she making, what's her contribution, how does she spend a lot of her time. I actually wrote a day in the life. So an absolutely ideal day from the minute she opens her eyes. What could she see? Where was she? Who was she with? You know, where was she living? How does she feel? How does she look? What had she been doing? What was she about to do that day? What was she saying? You know, and wrote it in as much detail as I possibly could, all the way through to the end of the day when all the day's things had been done and, you know, she went to bed. So that was a very, very detailed day. I also then from that, so you have the vision, you have the name, you have the qualities of this individual, you have the people that she's, you know, spending her time with. You've got the ideal day. You start to bring this individual to life. And of course it's you, but it is a new empowered V2 of you. And if there are particular challenges, so for example, where we've talked about, you know, there are challenges, because I can obviously on our one-to-ones, we can go through the detail of your own bespoke challenges, because, you know, we are all similar and we, you know, we all experience similar challenges, but some people find one thing more of a challenge than another. But for whatever your particular challenges are that you're identifying at the moment, then go into some detail about how this individual navigates those challenges. You know, so when she goes to a work event or when she's with her family, elderly or younger members, you know, when she doesn't feel like, you know, after a long day, prepping food for the next day, whatever it is, the challenges that you've mentioned, just write down in an ideal world how she, this new identity, would be navigating this particular challenge. So you get to a point where you've documented this all very well. And don't forget, this is only going to be the first time of many, many times. So this will help you. The other thing that I wanted to just touch on, then we'll get onto some questions. And we're going to do another couple of weeks on mindset. So it's only an intro here, but is about how you start the day. So you saw on my tracker that I was getting up at 7:30, sometimes, you know, 6:30, sometimes 8 o'clock. And I wondered, and all through my children's school life, you know, I was organized. Annabelle will tell you, I was very organized in terms of the night before, but I was a just-in-time person, you know, so they had to be at the school gates at 9:15. I think my car journey was 20 minutes. And so I would leave at 8:25, you know, never ever allowing for any eventualities, because I always had this mindset that, oh, you know, it takes 20 minutes on the best days, and that's what I'm going to make sure happens. And of course, inevitably, we were screeching in, you know, and everything was mad, rush, rush, rush. So, and I look back now and I just think that's crazy. You know, why did I used to start my days? I was lovely and organized the night before, but make life so much more difficult for myself. And I've since learned that if you give yourself that extra time in the beginning of the day, that the whole day goes differently. And there is a structure that we advocate on this program to really help you with this. But the most important part of all of it, which I'll say at the beginning, is that at the end of your sort of morning routine, before you do anything, you have decided who is going to run the day, who is going to run the show for you that day. And, you know, you make the decision that it is your new identity and the name you've given her you know, you make the decision that that person's going to run the day. In my case, it was the calm tone CEO. And I've subsequently had a number of different identities, by the way. I think I'm on about the fourth one now. You know, so every season, or when you feel that you've really embodied that new identity, you can sort of move on to the next one. So that first photo shoot that I had, and again, I think I've mentioned this to some of you, was I always remember, you know, a marketing agency coming in that we were using, and they suddenly presented this picture to me. I thought, oh my goodness, you know, there's the calm tone CEO. There she is. You know, the hair, the way she was looking. I mean, it was me, but that's what I envisaged, and there she was, and I constructed this identity. So you have to decide in the morning who's going to run the show, because if you don't decide, we go back to the identity that's constructed by accident. So finding the time in the morning to have a bit of a morning routine, ideally for an hour, not necessarily though, you know, start slowly, is where we start to visit the emotional gym. Because I've talked to you about nutrition, I've talked to you about the actual gym, the actual physical working out, but actually so much more important. Otherwise, you know, everybody who goes to the gym would have a six-pack forever, and, you know, we'd never have to revisit this. So much more important is the emotional gym, and working on our mindset and constructing this identity within our head. And so I'll run through it briefly. And a book which you may not have seen is a really good one to read. This one will really help you in deciding to construct how you construct your morning routine. But I'll just go through it briefly, you know, how it works for me and how it's worked for many others on this program and previously as well. We call it SAVERS. SAVERS stands for S for silence, A for affirmations, V for visualization, E for exercise, R for reading, and S for scribing, just because it was easy to say SAVERS, but that could be journaling and writing. And you can do it whichever order. Okay, Lou, see you later. You can do it whichever order that you want, but I would advocate to start off with, you do it in this order. So the first challenge is to give yourself longer, so getting up earlier. So once I decided that I was going to do this, I started getting up at 4:30. In fact, earlier than that, as Annabelle knows, sometimes it was closer to 4. So I experimented with a lot of times, and it seemed ridiculous because, as you've seen on my tracker, I was a 7 o'clock, 7:30 sort of person. So I started to get up at 4:30, then I decided 5 o'clock. And I know it was as shocking to me as it might be to you now. I can see a sort of a surprised face that, you know, you're in the middle of the night, it seems. But if you have a matching bedtime routine that gets you to bed and you have a decent amount of sleep, this can be the best time of the day. But I wouldn't advocate you all jump up at 4:30 tomorrow by any means, but I would just experiment getting up half an hour early to start off with, just half an hour. And how do you do that? Well, you know, you just, I don't know if any of you have come across a lady called Mel Robbins. She has a really great way of doing things like that. You don't question it. You don't allow your brain to negotiate with you and decide whether we're going to get up or not. Shall we? No, I don't want to. Oh, I don't need to. Oh, it's really warm here. You don't allow that conversation to take place. You open your eyes, you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're up. And you just get up. And then once you're up, you know, you do that thing that I mentioned. You go to the bathroom, you do your weight, you brush your teeth, you splash your face. Now you're up. I would always use then that time to put a really nice face pack on of some sort, because otherwise, when do we get the chance to do these things? And again, it becomes part of a stacking habit, a bit of a ritual. Now you've got the face pack on, you can't go back to bed. So you put this on and you start this routine. Now, what I mean by silence is 10 minutes meditation. There's many things that we can use. We've got the Sensei, we've got the Muse Band. I'll go on in the next forthcoming weeks, I'll talk about those, but you start with some meditation. Think about it as a shower. Think about it as showering your brain, and do 10 minutes meditation. There's no right or wrong way to do it at this stage. I will give you some advice on meditation. Face pack is like a face cream, any sort of cream, whatever one you decide. I'm sure, like me, you've got in your bathroom loads of creams that you just don't use. So start with them, you know, just use them. But, you know, 10 minutes meditation, nothing else than just sitting there and focusing on your breath just for 10 minutes. And it is amazing What happens? Because you stop your thoughts running away, you bring your thoughts back every time they do run away, you focus on your breath, and thoughts pop in, ideas pop in, solutions pop in. So these things just pop in. So that's it, 10 minutes. You then basically open your journal. I suggest you buy yourself a nice sort of journal. We've got these ones here, but a nice journal that you like, and you do some affirmations. And sorts of affirmations are going to come from you. I'm going to do some more work on affirmations, but they will be positive statements, because we so often talk to ourselves in such a way that we'd never speak to other people. We wouldn't be as negative to others that we are to ourselves. We beat ourselves up very often. We tell ourselves off for not doing things instead of congratulating ourselves on the things that we have done. So affirmations can start off the opposite to any of the negative things you say to yourself. I am powerful. I am strong. I am confident. I am a great mother. I am a great daughter or sister, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, I am good with money. I am good with numbers. I do deserve, you know, I am confident. I do deserve to do well in my business, or whatever it is that you are feeling is your challenge. Turn it round. Give yourself some affirmations. If you feel that there's a little brain saying, oh, but you're not really though, are you? You know, it's sort of drawing you back and making you feel bad about your affirmations, then change it to say things like, it is possible for me to be more confident. It is possible for me to get stronger. Now, you know, no one can doubt that. So maybe if you feel like you don't want to go the whole hog at this point, start your affirmations a bit more gently, but have a few affirmations. The next thing is the visualization. And this is the one where you start to construct this identity. I would just brain dump. You may not be able to think of a name, but try between now and next week of a name. I'm not going to force you to tell me this name. You can share it if you want. Some people do. What was one person's was the Ripped Witch, which is quite interesting. But you know, you have all sorts of names that come up, but you just pick a name. But the more important thing is that this name, then, when you're quickly deciding who's going to join, who's going to run the day, you just call the name. Calm Tone CEO, come here. I need you for this. You know, Ripped Witch, come here for this. So you just call that name, and the name embodies all the things that you write down in your visualization. So you write this stuff down. No one's going to read it. You're not going to have to read it out. It's for you. You know what you're constructing. So you answer all this and you expand it. So you do a brain dump on that. Some days you just read it because, you know, you might tweak it a little bit. And of course, as part of that visualization as well, is a perfect day in the life of. So you have a day where, so the back of mine here, I've got like a perfect day. There's 2 days of, and sometimes I tweak it, two days of lots of writing, which is a perfect day. And you know, you write this, and sometimes you think, oh, actually, no, I'm not waking up in a white apartment in the sky. It's actually a country house now. Or, you know, I did have a fluffy white dog, but no, I'm not now. I'm not having that dog anymore. You know, so it's quite fun because you sort of envisage all these little and big details. So that's the V. The exercise obviously comes when you go and do your steps, or you do your workout with us. So whichever you do, you don't have to do it in that order. And then you read. You read for 10 minutes, just a chapter, something, whichever one of these books. I definitely would suggest that you read in a book. You know, if I'm away, I'll use the Kindle, but, you know, I like doing notes on books. I do a lot of notes when I'm reading, and it sort of helps me to, to basically digest the information. So 10 minutes on reading. And then after that, you know, you basically would describe, because then you just journal. You journal what you're thinking. You journal your random notes. What's in your head, you get it out. It's part of the cleansing of the mind. You know, so if something is going around, Lou mentioned that something was going round and round in your head, you know, it's really a great way to get this stuff out. If you're thinking this or that, you know, shall I do this or that? You know, you can just journal. I wonder if there's a third option. I wonder if I could combine the options. You get these things out on paper. You're not quite sure. You know, you maybe have some criteria for selecting which is the solution. And it just really helps to journal this stuff. And then you move on with your day. You've done, and it's amazing because as part of that, you've now decided who's going to run the day. You've had your calm time. You know, you've developed a strengthening mindset. and then you carry on, and you can get that all done in half an hour. I would advocate myself an hour, because by the time you get up and put your face on and, you know, make your coffee or whatever it is that you're having, and you sit down and you do this, you know, an hour will make it comfortable. There's much more to tell you, like nighttime routines and things like that, but I'm very conscious of the time. We're up for time, and I wanted to give you a chance to ask some questions. So it's just a start. Any questions?
Angela, I wanted to ask, how do you manage other people's expectations of this different person of you? Because if I go out and say, oh, I'm not drinking tonight, and my girlfriends are like, oh no, why, come on, and I tell them, oh, but I'm doing this, that, and they're like, oh, you're so boring, come on, let's get, you know.
Yeah,
that's managing other people's expectations of myself.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. If you are you know, very tight with a group of friends, and you know, you're used to a particular routine and they're used to you being a particular persona. I certainly experienced this myself, and the sad fact is that sometimes, you know, you end up losing some friends, or rather then you're just not so close with them anymore, because a part of the identity that you construct is the friendship group, the peer group, you know. And there's definitely a true saying, which is you are the, I wish Marion was on for this part, because Marion will give you the benefit of her experience with this, but definitely a true saying that you know, you are the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And in the end, it boils down to, there's lots of things I could say on it. In the interest of time, I'll probably revisit this again a lot later on in the course, because we do talk about relationships. But a few things to say. Firstly, they'll say something about it, but you're holding up a mirror to them, and you will probably find they start to then criticize you for it, then not say anything, and then start doing it themselves. So because, you know, all the reasons that you want to improve your physique, improve your mindset, get stronger, all of these things, they'll all have those same things as well. And they, in the end, they will be supportive if they're proper friends, and some won't be, and some will be very highly critical. I mean, Annabelle, I don't know if you want to add anything, because, you know, you middle of when you very first started this big group of friends, you know, going out and socializing a lot. I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, so I would never, I haven't ever stopped drinking and said I'm not drinking tonight or I'm not eating this or whatever, but especially with drinking, once everyone has had one, no one notices. So I would always get the first one and then just not finish it, and have something else on the side. So there's like ways to not bring too much attention to it, where they will start going, because I had the same thing. But you know, to sort of fly under the radar in that sense. But some people are really supportive, some people just aren't, and it's nothing to do with you, it's all to do with them. One of my best friends is like the complete opposite to supportive. But I think when you take into account that it's about them, it's not about you, and at the end of the day they'll say what they're going to say and then they forget about it because they're much more about their life than yours. I don't know, it's never an easy one, but you sort of get through the pain part and everyone's used to it and no one cares. The people that, you know, matter anyway.
Yeah, I mean, people do accept it in the end. So you have to just be thinking about part of your identity that you're constructing, you know, what sort of people are that person's friend, you know, if she surrounds herself with supportive people, then what would those friends be saying to her and doing with her? And gradually you work through it like that, and also thinking about upfront how you might navigate it as well. So a bit was mentioned, but you know, you're purposely evolving. You know, you're on this program to purposely evolve, and so the evolution means that things have to change for you to really, you know, fulfill your potential and be the person that you want to be, because otherwise, you know, the other way to do it is to for things to happen accidentally and you sort of stay part of the normal masses. And you know, we can see what happens. You know, the vast majority of people, they don't look after their body until they really have to. They get ill, or you know, there's a reason that they really have to do something about it, and you're taking control, you know, before you have to, sort of thing. But thinking about it up front, how you might address it, and there's lots of ways to do it. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Angela, I've got one quick question.
Yeah.
When you were saying that you kind of used to sleep at about, used to wake up about 7 o'clock, or used to be 6:30, whatever. How did you go from there to like 4:30?
I struggled, you know. I mean, because I used to never go to bed before midnight, and well, yeah, you know, I was always a night owl, and so consequently, I'd struggle to also get up at 7 or 7:30. When I had to do it, I would do it, but I didn't like doing it any more than anybody. So it was a real struggle to start off with, and the things that helped me were the habit stacking, the things I've described, having the routine, and what then happens is, because you're training more, because you're eating differently, because you're not drinking as much, you start to get into a routine where you're a bit tireder earlier in the evening. You know, because you're not going out as much either as well. You know, I found that I started to pick and choose a little bit more some of the things I was doing, and you know, I was doing like Xenia. I was out on a lot of social events. I found if I wanted to, I could be out 5 nights a week easily. You know, events 7 nights a week if include the weekends. But I started to pick and choose things a bit more and not attend every single thing. And you know, it wasn't easy, but I definitely went more that way. And I found that I was tireder because I was working out more, doing more steps. Naturally, that makes you tired. So I was going to bed more rigidly, trying to aim for before 10 o'clock, which was unheard of for me, by the way. You know, to go to bed before 10 o'clock was a real challenge for me. I used to read,
that's key for me.
you know, and do my gratitude journal and things like that. We'll talk about nighttime routines, but gradually, you know, you go to bed earlier, you get up a bit earlier, and then you go to bed early, and it just becomes a cycle. It doesn't happen overnight, but that's what happens.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no other burning questions, we're going to do one more call. I think next week is the one. Yeah, I think the next week is the first one-to-ones. So that's right, Annabelle, is it next week? Yeah. So I'll have one-to-ones with you all next week, and I'll give you a link so you can book them, and we can address, you know, your particular challenges in a bit more detail. And then the week after, I'll bring the Tony Robbins coach on and share with you nighttime routine, scorecard, and all that. And you know, hopefully this has been helpful as well in basically helping you to address some of the challenges that you mentioned, and gives you a bit more belief in that what you're experiencing is the same as all of us, but you're going in the right direction. You know, you're not experiencing any challenges that I haven't experienced and other people in the program haven't as well. So you're just where you need to be, really. All right, well, have a lovely evening. Lovely to see you all.
Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice to see you all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.